Hi, I'm Brock Davidson from Brock's Performance. Well, you normally won't see me standing in front of a Harley-Davidson Tri-Glide. This belongs to my buddy Bob. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Went to school with Bob. He's a friend of mine, and he has a problem. His wife won't ride with him anymore. Now, some guys would say, sweet, that's awesome. Well, Bob wants to ride with his wife. Girlfriends, you know, a lot of us like to ride with our significant others. We have other bikes that we ride when we want to be alone. But anyway, back to Bob. His wife doesn't want to ride with him because when she rides on this bike, it hurts her back. It's just not comfortable for her. So Bob said, hey Brock, you know, can you help me out? And I said, well, you know, I don't know anything about Tri-Glides, but I do know a little bit about suspension. So when he brought it over, we checked it out. I checked it out. My assistant, Richard, who you may see in this video, we looked at it, and you know, we just basically checked over general things. And when it comes to suspension, the Tri-Glide here has an air suspension. So first thing we did was, okay, basic maintenance techniques say, what kind of do you have air in your shocks? Well, we checked it. It had about 36 pounds of pressure in the shocks, which is a plush ride. Some people will go, I know on my road glide, I'll go as high as 50 pounds, but we did a little searching on the internet. The guys say go 50 pounds. Some guys go as much as 60. Let me show you what I did. As soon as Bob came, I said, okay, let's think about Bob. Let's think about his wife, Diane. Let's think about if they have gear in the bike and they hit a bump. Well, you can see, if I can just press down with my hand, you had your wife, you had your gear, you go over a bump, this thing's going to bottom out at 36 psi. So what we're going to do, I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to show you how we fill up and check the rear pressure. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up to about 50 pounds and show you the difference. Okay, so I removed the right hand cover to expose the Schrader valve. As I mentioned a few moments ago, it had 36 pounds of pressure in it. I used my handy dandy bike pump to pump it up to around 80 psi, somewhere up in there. Now you don't want to use like a compressor or anything. This is a real low volume system. You could pop the lines and damage the system. Got a high pressure gauge here from Napa, and I'm just going to put it on the Schrader valve. All right, so I'm a little over 80. I'm not going to touch this because the bleed off, because I know that's going to let too much pressure out. So I'm going to just sort of wiggle down here very slowly. There we go. Now I'm going to set it on the high limit, which is right about 60, a little higher than 60, and pull it off because I know that's going to drop some pressure. Now we should be right around 60 psi, which is the high limit for this suspension setup. Now, come back here and press. All right. So, okay, it's stiffer. It's going to give you a stiffer ride. But when I press down, see how it just pops back up? Just by adding more pressure, you really don't get any more rebound dampening. So, it's still going to be a stiff ride. It's not going to come back up any softer or slower. So, all we really did was just add a bunch of equivalent of spring preload and additional compression, but no dampening. So what we're going to do, we're going to install a set of Öhlins, and the real pronunciation is Öhlins, but most people in America aren't comfortable with that. So Öhlins HD 159 shocks, and we're going to choose. Bob's about my size. His wife is she's tall, not real heavy. But you know, they'll be loaded down with about 80 pounds of gear. So we're going to go ahead and go on the stiff side with the suspension. I'm going to start off with a 29 Newton spring. So we're going to install the shocks. We're going to set the sag and see what we can get out of this thing for some initial adjustments. Now I took it for a ride here not too long ago. It was at 36 psi. It had a plush ride, what I would consider spongy for my type of riding. So I'm going to get it set up a little bit on the more aggressive side for my taste, and also what I think Bob's going to enjoy. If you like twisty roads, but also comfortable for his wife, because this whole bottoming out the suspension and all the problems that we're having, but we're going to eliminate that. So anyway, we're going to install some shocks and show you a little bit about how that's done, and we'll be right back. Wanted to point out a couple things upon removing the OEM rear shock. Remove the rear wheel, of course, and you have to have 2 jacks. Excuse our country setup here, but we've got one under the rear axle and one under the frame. Problem we had was trying to get the OEM shock out. The lower bolt was in the way of this of the framework holding the rear bodywork and all of that apparatus. So we had to pull the top bolt out first, which allowed this to pivot up. We pulled off our air line, so now we can pull the OEM shock out. And remember, these do have liquid inside of them, so they'll spill all over if you're not careful. And now we'll just pull this out and replace it with the Öhlins. Here's the Öhlins HD 159 we're going to install. There's a little spacer that goes inside the shock, a couple other spacers. This is how it will actually be assembled on the Trike. This is the rebound dampening knob that will be adjusting the rebound dampening, which will also affect compression. I put 3/4 of an inch of spring preload in here. You have to start somewhere on your adjustments, so we're going to install these shocks on the Trike here, see where we are initially, and make some additional adjustments from there. Oh, I do want to point out there is a set screw. After we do get our adjustments set, we'll use it's a little nylon screw. We'll use a screwdriver to set that in place so that they don't move going down the road. So we'll get these installed and be right back. I want to point out that we did have to adjust the shock length of the Öhlins to get the top bolt back in. It was slightly longer than stock out of the box. So if you look, we've got about an 80 thousandths gap now versus, all right, about 115, 120 thousandths gap. Hard to do this in video, I apologize. Sorry, 160 thousandths gap versus an 80 thousandths gap. So you do have to adjust them a little bit, but that's not a problem. That's one of the nice things about the Öhlins shock. It does have an adjustable clevis down here at the bottom, or rod end, I guess in this case. Anyway, thought you might want to know. So what we've been doing here is installing the shocks and trying to get a baseline just to set what we call a rider sag. And what that is, just in a nutshell, is how much does the bike drop with the rider in place. Now, I know my buddy Bob is right about the same weight that I am, so for just as a baseline setting, we wanted to set the sag at about 3/8 of an inch. Well, with a 3/4 gap spring preload on the shocks, we only had about 1/4 of an inch, so we took 2 full turns out. I'm going to bring my super fast helper Richard in here, and so we're going to measure. What we got there, Richard?
We got about 15 1/8 inches.
About 15 1/8. So when I get on the bike,
We got about 14 3/4.
all right, 15 1/8, 14 3/4. That's 3/8 of an inch sag. Some guys might like a little more sag for a plusher ride, a softer ride. We're going to set it up where I think it needs to be. I'll take it for a ride. We can always adjust it later, but we're going to go for 3/8 of an inch. If I were a lighter rider, I would take a little bit of the spring preload out of the springs. If I were a heavier rider, I'd have to add a little bit more to get our 3/8 of an inch. Now, 3/8 of an inch is just the base load that we're going from. Some guys might want a little softer ride. Some guys might want a little firmer. You'll figure that out for your riding conditions, how you're, where you're going to be riding, how much gear, etc. But this is just where we're going to set it for now, and I'm going to explain to you how we set this and how we came up with this right now. So I'm trying to show you where we're measuring. If you remember, we had set that gap at about 3/4 of an inch before. We pulled 2 full revolutions out of it. Looks like it's about 0.687 now. You don't have to be that accurate, just so long as they're pretty close on both sides. That's all you need. So now, when we adjust the dampening knob, we go from closed. So closed is, if you're looking at the shock from this direction, to close the valve, we would turn it all the way closed. All right, don't force it. That's closed. If I say -5 clicks, that's -5. That's -10. That's -15. That's where we're going to start with both shocks for a single passenger. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a moment. Okay, we have our rider sag set at 3/8 of an inch. So spring preload is taken care of. I just want to show you now the type of adjustability these Öhlins HD 159 shocks have. If I could get Richard to help me out here again. So basically what we've got right now is set up for solo passenger. We've got -25 clicks. So basically if I push down, all right, so that was very similar to the way the bike came in, or Trike, with the 36 psi of air. Richard, if you would help me out, go ahead and turn those in. Let's turn them to -10, so put 15 clicks into it. Okay, so this would be, let's say Diane jumps on the back, wants to go for a ride. Now, stiffens it up. It's going to make it more stable all the way around. Gives it more compression dampening as well as rebound dampening for a passenger. Well, now let's say they want to put some gear on here, take a trip to the Smokies. Richard, let's just close it all the way off. Twisty, turny roads. Maybe Bob's feeling a little froggy and wants to get into some aggressive cornering with Diane on the back. She'd kill him, but anyway. So watch this. Now we've got all of our gear loaded up the tour pack, loaded up the trunk. Diane's on there. We've got helmets, we've got jackets, you name it. This thing just got heavy. We've got plenty of adjustment, all kinds of adjustment. For solo riding, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to I'm going to try it at -20 turns and take it for a ride and see what it likes, and then let Bob ride it and see what he likes. But the moral of the story is we've got a whole range of adjustability there that will allow Bob to fine-tune this trike. Road conditions, additional weight, gear, solo, passenger, you name it, it's all there. And we'll figure out a nice setting for him. And if he wants it more plush, Diane takes it, goes for a ride and says, no, Bob, that's too stiff. Back it off a little bit, soften it up for her. It's just so easy, and it's that easy. So we're gonna get this thing set up, put the wheels back on it. I'll take it for a ride, and then get ready for Bob to come pick it up. Well, I can tell you after just a brief ride that this is a much changed machine. It's much more responsive to rider input. The ride is it's hard to explain. It's more firm, but it's comfortable. I went over some asphalt patches just to see what the bump situation was like. And and listen, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I own several Harley-Davidsons, but when you put Öhlins suspension on the rear, it works so well that it generally focuses on how the front end may not be so nice on these bikes. Sometimes we may need to look at some cartridges in the front forks now to make the whole thing match. So much improved, very nice. I'm impressed.
I believe Bob will be impressed, and I think Diane will really enjoy the new ride back here. So we'll see what they think. Hopefully we can get him over here to pick this thing up, or maybe I'll just deliver it to him. Beautiful day out today. So anyway, we'll see you soon.
Okay, everyone, we're back. We have Bob here. How you doing, Bob?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Unfortunately, Diane's not available, but we're going to work around that and show you how here in a minute. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to have Richard step back in again, and we're going to check the ride height of the Trike for real this time. The last time we were just checking estimates. So Öhlins recommends between 25 and 35 millimeters of sag between the suspension being compressed and the suspension being unloaded. Now, this can get very complex. It's in the Öhlins owner's manual if you really want to go mess with it between the front and rear suspension, but we're just going to concentrate on the rear right now. I'm going to do my best Hercules impression and unload the suspension. Richard's going to measure what we are unloaded.
You're at about 24.5 inches.
Okay, so 24.5 inches unloaded. So 25 millimeters is 0.985, that's about an inch. 35 millimeters is 1.377. We're going to call that an inch and 3/8. So what we're going to do is see if we're close from our previous dimensions. Now I'm going to introduce Eryn, who's going to sit in for Diane. Eryn, if you want to go ahead and jump on. And then Bob, if you would also jump on. All right, get comfortable. Richard's going to measure again.
You are at about 23.5 inches.
All right, so right about an inch, which is where Öhlins suggests to fall in the range. So Richard and I did a pretty nice job of estimating the spring preload for the suspension to be okay. So now we had set it at minus 20 clicks. We're going to let Bob take a ride on his own to see what the solo suspension feels like, and then we're going to get Eryn's opinion on what it feels like with two people, and then we'll just chat about it. So we'll be right back. Okay, so Bob just went for a ride with our Diane sit-in Eryn here. We'll ask Bob, with the passenger, with Eryn on the back, suspension feel good?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell she was back there. Felt
Nice.
really good, yeah.
Okay, well, it looks like we've got those settings right, and like I said, we're at minus 20 clicks. I explained to Bob what we had talked about previously about turning in the rebound dampening. We'll stiffen up compression depending on, solo rider, passenger, and gear. So Bob has a good understanding of that. Looks like
Right.
we've got some nice base settings here. Eryn, from a passenger's perspective?
As far as, if there was no vibration in the motor and no wind, I would have thought I was snoozing in a Cadillac or something. It was definitely very comfortable, especially as a passenger. Usually you're the one that gets the beating when you're hit anything, even a crack or anything at all, and it was great. No pressure or pain.
Good, awesome. That's exactly what we were looking for here. So I guess until next time, I hope you enjoyed the Trike suspension lesson. So Bob, thank you. Eryn, thank you. Richard, appreciate the help. And until next time, Brock Davidson from Brock's Performance.